So, welcome everyone to our Grant Writing 101 webinar. We're very excited that all of you can join us tonight, and we're really excited to have three awesome presenters here to talk about this very important topic. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We are recording this webinar, and we plan to send out a copy of the recording afterwards. We also plan to send everyone a copy of the slides when we're done. Also, if you have questions, we're planning to have our presenters kind of present all the way through and then take questions at the end. You can submit questions through the Q&A function in Zoom, and if you need any help with that, you can chat us in the chat function. We'll help you with getting there. But yeah, we're getting ready to get started. We're very excited to have you here, and I'm going to introduce you to our three awesome presenters. So we have Amy Hudson, Foodwell Alliance's Director of Marketing and Development. She's going to be speaking to us today about foundation and corporate grants. We have Kalia Hamill, Foodwell Alliance Grants and Resources Manager, speaking about Foodwell Alliance's Community Garden and Farm grants. And then we have Brennan Washington, the Southeast Regional Coordinator for Southern Sayre and the owner of Phoenix Gardens, and he's going to be speaking about government grants. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amy.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We're glad you're here. And I am here to talk to you about getting grants from foundations and corporations. All right. So foundations and corporations can be really great resources for raising money. So don't be afraid to write a grant. If you've never written one, maybe you've written a grant to Foodwell Alliance and never tried anybody else, or maybe this is your first time period, but don't be afraid to try it. And I'm going to hopefully give you some just solid tips. These, again, like it's a 101. So these are the basics. And we're going to cover four areas. We're going to cover prospecting, which is grant seeking, and then your grant toolkit and what goes in it, and story assets, and then some additional info and tips. So prospecting, I wanted to just provide you guys with several really good sources for finding grants. It's not limited to this, but these are some good sources to start with anyway. So the Georgia Center for Nonprofits is great. So if you are a nonprofit, this is definitely a great resource. You can go to gcn.org and you're going to click just from their website. You'll click resources from their main menu, then you will click funding and resource opportunities. And then you can scroll down and find the grants and awards that are available right now. Now, if you did want a heads up on brand new grants, you would need to become a member of GCN, which is the Georgia Center for Nonprofits. Their fees are pretty reasonable and they're scaling fees. So I definitely would say to look into that. And they have a lot of good courses and things. So it's definitely a worthwhile thing to look into. The next would be ChatGPT. Why not see what AI has to say about it? And so we'll go ahead in a few minutes and talk about that a little more in depth. Then for farmers, we have Good Agriculture, which is just, it's a paid service. So we'll go into that a little bit. And then Seed Money is just a grant that I found for gardeners, for community gardeners, and also just networking with other growers, with nonprofits, with people in your realm is a great way to find out what's out there. And then LinkedIn is great. We find things through that, and my coworkers will, they'll be on LinkedIn and tell me what they've seen, and other social media too. And then there are some more pricey platforms, which we're certainly not ready for as a 15-person team. So this is if you are really, you got a lot of folks on your team and you are high dollar, then you can afford these, but I wouldn't really recommend them right now. Okay, so just a little bit on the Georgia Center for Nonprofits. So if you do go on their website, this is just a slide that's showing you what it looks like, just a screenshot of some of the offerings that they're showing us there. So if you go on their website, and it just, you can then click the details. So I landed on the Kroger Company because that's one that we will, often go for and write grants for. But there's a big long list, and it will tell you, what it's for. And so I know that the Aspen Institute is not something that I'm going to try to write a grant for because that's not our area. So you can see exactly what they're for. And then for ChatGPT, a couple of tips on that. This is just what I got when I entered the question, where can I apply for grants for my community garden? So lo and behold, Foodwell Alliance was the first thing that popped up, but this is a screenshot. So there were several, there were like 5 things that popped up that I could see. And then what it does, it's gonna ask you if you want to go a little bit deeper. Like it asked me, hey, if you like, I can pull together a tailored list of 5 to 10 current grant opportunities in your area. And, you can answer, yes, please, that would be great. And then it'll shoot that out for you too. But I also want to offer a word of warning to be careful when you're entering questions in ChatGPT about anything. Just be careful you don't enter anything you would not want to be publicly known, because it's generative AI and it's just going to go into a pool of data. And once you put something out there, it'll be out there for all to see, and you cannot get it back. You can't take it back. So word of warning on that one. Okay, and then on Good Agriculture. So as I was saying, this is a paid service for farm grants, and they just do everything. They will find the grants for you. They'll handle your application writing. They'll offer guidance along the way, and they also have a newsletter that you can subscribe to. So definitely worth looking into. I really don't know the rates, but I did want to include that for the farmers out there. And then seed money is the one. I just was looking around and happened to find this, and it seems like if you are a community garden, you should know about this. Unfortunately, the window for applications just now passed for this one, but you can put it on your list for, next year. All right, now I get really excited about this because this is the thing that helped me when I started writing grants, was to create a toolkit. And it makes the whole process just so much easier if you can do this. And there are 3 main components to this. You're going to put together in your toolkit your most requested attachments, because when you write grants, they're going to ask you to attach a lot of things. And so I'm just going to provide you guys with the most common things that are requested as far as attachments when you write grants, and then answers to the most often asked questions. That's something you want to go ahead and write for yourself, so you'll have that in a bank for yourself, and story assets. Okay, so let's talk about those attachments. These are the things that they're most likely going to ask for, no matter what grant it is you're writing. They're going to want your IRS status letter if you're a nonprofit. And I realize not all grants are for nonprofits. I am focusing in my section tonight a lot on the nonprofit, but I do realize that. But anyway, we'll keep going. You'll need your W-9 for your current year. You're going to need your budget for your operating budget for your current year. And then if the grant is for a specific project, they're going to want the project budget, like how much is that going to cost, the overall budget, and you're going to need to provide that. And often they will ask for you to provide a budget for exactly what you're asking them for, the amount that you're asking them for, as well as the overall project budget. And then a financial record from your prior fiscal year. That could be an audit, it could be a 990, or just financial records that you do happen to have. And then if you've got a board, they're going to want your board list. And sometimes it will give you the opportunity to provide additional things that will help, kind of give attention to yourself. So optional attachments like photos, impact reports, brochures, links to social media and media coverage, that kind of thing. The most often asked questions. Okay, so you're going to want to compile answers ahead of time, and you're going to be so glad you did this, because you will be equipped with, you're building a framework for yourself, and you're not going to have to go searching around, and you're not going to have to rewrite these answers every single time you apply for a new grant. You're just going to have it there for yourself. So the first thing you're going to want is just to create a one-pager, and we do all this in Google Drive here at Foodwell. But just a drive where you can share with other people. If you're collaborating with people on the grant writing process, it's really, really important to have a shareable drive where you will keep your toolkit and all of these items. So you're going to have a one-pager with all your basics. The name of the person that's applying for the grant, that would be me. They always want the name of the executive director. They want that contact info, the address, the phone number, all those things. They're going to ask for your website URL, social media links, and your EIN number, which is your employer ID number. And then they're going to want to know, now that's the easy stuff. Now you're going to get into What is your mission, vision? And they often want to know the history, the founder's story. That can sometimes be very interesting, or it can just be basic, but they're often going to ask that. And then they want to know, what are your goals? And so be thinking about them right ahead of time. Hey, what are my goals for 1 year, for 3 years, even 5 years? I mean, here at FoodWell, we do 3-year strategic plans. And so it makes it easy to answer this question because I can just go and go into our strategic plan and grab the answers there. Then they're going to want to know, who do you serve and what need are you addressing? And then what does success look like for your org or garden or farm? How are you going to measure impact? So if you can go ahead and answer that. And then what challenges do you foresee, or what are you dealing with right now? What challenges are you dealing with as a nonprofit, a garden, a farm? What challenges might you foresee and risk that you might foresee? And being able to think all of this through and have it all written out is just going to be amazing. You're going to love that. So the last note I'll say is, if you have specific projects that need funding, so you're not just writing a description of your organization and answering all these questions, you might want to also go ahead and give a description of that special project that you are writing the grant for. And next is story assets. It's really great to have these things handy already. So photos, links to social media posts, even reels, links to videos like on YouTube, that kind of thing. Links, if you've gotten some news coverage, that's really helpful to have that. You might be asking, like, where am I putting these links? I will literally put them on a sheet of paper, like a one-pager, even if it's just 3 links. And that way I can upload it if they're asking for attachments and do it that way. Sometimes you can add it to your actual application as well. And then your most current impact, if you've got an impact report or an annual report, you can have that handy. And then stories, just super short stories, like 1 paragraph that include quotes from the people that you serve. It's just super important. The way we do this and the way we get ahead of it here at FoodWell is that we always go out during the summertime and we have a story gathering mission that we're on in the summertime. So from July to August and even into September, we choose about 6 different farms and gardens that we serve, and we call them way ahead and get it all arranged and everything. And we do hire a photographer, but you could actually do this. Let's say you're a garden and you could interview a garden member or 2 or 3. You could interview somebody if you have a pantry with your garden. Where you donate food, you could definitely interview somebody who loves to go to that pantry and is so excited about getting that food from the pantry, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be fancy. You do not have to hire a photographer. You can use your phone. They take great photographs, and so you can really make it pretty simple. And just get yourself a little bank of stories and photos. I'm going to give you an example. The woman that you're seeing here is Jasmine Herndon, and she is with Healing Hipster Farm. And this is somebody that we're featuring currently for our Giving Tuesday campaign. And so for future grants, but for Giving Tuesday for sure, we're doing some storytelling around that. So this is an example, and I'm just going to read it to you real quick. Super short and sweet. And we just say, resources and support from FoodWell Alliance allowed Jasmine to invest in her farm, adding chickens, funding a well, and planting fruit trees without raising prices for the food bundles that she provides for her neighbors. And then the quote from Jasmine, FoodWell comes in and really helps with my needs, from seeds to the chickens and renewing licenses, said Jasmine. It allows me to keep my bundle at $25, and that's her bundle that she sells to her neighbors. So that it's just really great to have a super short story, including a quote, and have maybe a bank of 4 of those would be a great thing if you have the time to do that ahead of time. And then next, we're ready to go on to just some additional information and tips, and then I'll wrap it up from there. So before you apply for a grant, they're always going to have their grant qualifications. And you definitely want to read through that. You want to get super familiar with that. Read it again and again. First read is just to assess whether you're even eligible or not. And then you may find out, whoops, this really isn't a great fit. And then you can just go on to the next opportunity and not worry about that one. But if you decide it is a good fit, you're going to want to really get familiar with those qualifications just to make sure that you're following along as they are asking. You want to determine whether you're going to apply for general operations or a specific project. We often apply for specific projects, but general operations from time to time. Add the grant deadlines, which will be in the qualifications. They'll be provided for you. You've got to add that to your calendar. I add it to my written calendar. I add it to, like, I've got 2 calendars, digital. I put it everywhere because you do not want to miss a deadline. And you also want to pace yourself because there are things that do get in the way. You think maybe this grant will be really easy. I'll wait till the last minute. It seems like it's going to be easy. And then it ends up, it is not easy. And then you put yourself under a lot of stress that you really don't need to. So I just really encourage you to pace yourself and really take care of the easy stuff, get familiar with the portal, and things like that. Because every grant portal is different. Some of them use the same ones, but I've worked in so many different portals, and that's something I'll step into in a minute. Talk a little bit more about grant portals and the lovely world of that. But some grants also have a two-step process. So they may be only asking for first your LOI, which is a letter of interest, or an RFP, a request for a proposal. And then when they read those, they'll choose the ones they like best, that are the best matches, and invite you to actually apply for the grant. You're never, never, never going to put your answers right in the grant portal. You're going to always start in a Google Doc or a Word doc or wherever you write in a shared folder. You're going to start there. And then you're going to take, once the answers are done, you're going to copy and paste that into the portal once everything is absolutely solid and good to go. And how are we solid and good to go? Well, you're going to check all the word and character counts. So for every answer to every question, they're going to have character counts that they will allow. Most go up to 4,000. Some questions, it'll be like just 1,000, or we just want 250 characters, that kind of thing. But some go up to 4,000. I even think ours is set to 10,000 character counts at Foodwell. You do not need to answer 10,000 character counts, even if it says that on any grant. They're really not looking for you to do that. That's just the way the portal is set up. So you're going to want to check all that and make sure that you have not written too many, because if you go in and you try to copy paste something that's too long into the portal and it's like, oops, you're way over the character count, then you've got to go back and rewrite that thing. So you want to be sure. And sometimes every different portal is different, and sometimes character counts count spaces, and sometimes they don't. And so, I've tripped myself up because I thought I was under the character count, but they were counting spaces as well as, as well as letters and numbers and that kind of thing. So had to go back and remove some stuff. So you're always going to have a member of your team or somebody on your board, or for me, it's always Kate Connor, our executive director. She always reviews it before I'm going to copy paste into the portal and submit that grant. I would never, ever just do it on my own, because it's really important to have 2 sets of eyes on it. I wouldn't have any more than 2 sets of eyes. You don't need too many cooks in the kitchen, but definitely have somebody review it. And then you're always going to export your attachments as PDFs. You never want to upload something as a Word document. It's always going to be exported as a PDF before you upload it. And name your attachments consistently. So it'll be like, for us, it's always Foodwell Alliance _ and then annual budget, or whatever the item is. And then we consistently name everything that we're uploading the same thing. So you can. And the last thing for me is just a few more tips here. You might want to consider seeking grants that are beyond like production, your main focus area. So for example, if you do educational workshops, or you have an ecological focus there as well as production, or you're building community. These are areas they're often looking to fund grantors. And so definitely, don't limit yourself just to your main area of focus, because you might be just cutting yourself out of something that you could actually get some funds for. Success rates. I've had this question posed, like, what's my success rate if I submit a grant? You definitely can't assume you're going to get that grant just because you submit it. So generally speaking, what they say and who is they, but 1 to 4 out of every 10 is kind of a ballpark figure there. And I have to say, that's about been my experience. So there's several factors, though, that you definitely want to take into account. One, it's how competitive the grant is. So we were really, really excited. We had applied for one, and I just found out today we didn't get it. And it was a really exciting grant. But there were only 2 organizations in Atlanta that were going to get that grant. So I knew that it was going to be a long shot. But so it's how competitive is the grant? How well your program is matched. So that's really important. Back to that qualifier sheet, are you eligible and how well is it matched? And then how effective you were in your writing. You got to pay attention. You got to really, one thing I would say is it's very tempting to just keep those answers that maybe you put in your toolkit and just copy paste and slap it in there. But you really want to answer their questions as they are asking them because every grantor, every application asks those things just a little bit differently. And then lastly, I will leave you with an excellent podcast. It's called Fundraising Heyday Podcast. And you can find it in all the places where podcasts are. And they really put one out almost every week. And Kimberly Hayes DeMoiga is one of the hosts, and she used to work with me at the Atlanta Community Food Bank. She knows her fundraising inside and out, and this is just a great resource. So that is it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. Hi, everybody. My name's Kalia, and I'm the Grants and Resources Manager at Foodwell. So I'm going to talk a bit about Foodwell specific grants. So a lot of the things that Amy just talked about in terms of grant applications will apply to our applications. But I wanted to kind of get down into the nitty gritty of these our 2 annual grant cycles in case anyone had any questions on those. So the funding cycle for 2026, we have our annual community garden grant as well as our annual farm grant. And each of those grants has 2 funding categories. So we try to keep our grant program in a place where it can, meet farms and gardens that are at different places in their journey. So we have a smaller support grant in both of those categories that I'll get into more of the details about what those funds can be used for, but typically for more operating expenses, a smaller infrastructure project, staff expenses, things like that. And then we offer our forward grants in both community garden and farm categories, specifically for farms or gardens that are looking to make a really large infrastructure improvement and are looking to, really move their operation forward and take the next step. So you see the funding amounts for all 4 of the tiers on this page. I will highlight that our community garden grant applications are due on Sunday of this week. So if you're a community garden and you don't have your grant application started already, I would start that ASAP. And then our farm grant applications are due January 11th. Okay, so I'm going to start specifically with the community garden grants. So we know that community gardens look a million different ways. There's a lot of different management structures and membership structures to these gardens, but one thing that all gardens need is funding to help support their operations. So the community garden grants can be used for infrastructure, supplies, materials, and things to just empower gardens to keep doing the great work that they're doing. So for 2026, we're going to have 2 categories that I already talked about. So we'll have the $1,500 garden support grant and then the $10,000 garden forward grant. And we're going to award $75 of the $1,500 and $2 of the $10,000. So like Amy was saying, when you're talking about, percent of grants awarded and your likelihood of getting awarded a grant, obviously with 75 grants available in the $1,500 category, your odds of getting that grant are much higher. We have one application for both grants. So you're going to fill out the top area that has your overarching garden information. And then there are two different sections where you can outline two different projects if you were to get the 1,500 or if you were to get the 10,000. And applying for both doesn't hurt your chances of getting either of them. You are only going to get one, but I recommend everyone apply for the $1,500 one. And then if you want to apply for that 10,000 as well, definitely go for it. But it's always great to, make sure that you're covered for that smaller tier as well, just in case, just since the odds of, we typically get about between 100 and 120 applications, and then we'll have 80 total awarded. So the odds of receiving a grant are really high as long as you meet the eligibility criteria. But definitely I would cover your bases and fill out that $1,500 application at least. So like I just mentioned, we do have eligibility criteria for a community garden grant. So the biggest one, the first one that you really need to check is the location of your garden. So it needs to be within the 5-county service area. So Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, Gwinnett, or Clayton counties. We get a lot of questions that are like, oh, I have members that live there, but they live in Fulton County, but we're right outside. Can we still be eligible? Unfortunately not. It's based on the actual geographic location of the garden. So definitely make sure that you meet that minimum requirement before applying. In terms of membership, we require that the garden must regularly involve at least 5 individual household members. And so that means can't be 5 people from one household. That could just potentially be just a backyard garden. But we need, 5 people from individual households that are, unrelated to each other, that are, coming to build community in a space. The types of gardens that are eligible to apply, I know those can look really different. So it's not necessarily that you have to have 5 members, due paying members. That's, a question we get if you are part of a nonprofit and you have a staff that's managing, or you're part of an organization that runs a community garden and you have volunteers that are coming in and out. You can still be eligible in that way. It doesn't have to be that you have 5 beds for 5 members necessarily, but you have to at least meet that interacting with 5 individual members. Also, I'll talk about this in a minute, but fiscal sponsorship. So if you are a community garden operated by a group of neighbors or community members, you will need to identify a fiscal sponsor to receive the funds. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. But the one thing to note is if you're a previous recipient, so if you received funds in the 2025 grant cycle, we're requiring that everyone submits their final report before they are eligible to reapply this year. So we want to make sure that, we're closing the loop on grants and that everyone, we're pretty flexible in our grant reports. They don't require super detailed financial reporting or receipts. We really just want to hear about all the great work you guys did, and we want to see some pictures and really just make sure that we have that, open line of communication with grant recipients. So make sure that you get your grant report in. They were technically due on Monday, but if you haven't submitted it yet, just get it in by the end of the week. So fiscal sponsors, if you are a garden that is not set up to accept funds, so you don't have your own bank account, you can identify a tax exempt organization that will accept the funds, hold the funds in their account, and then disperse them to you throughout the year. So a lot of times that'll be an organization like Park Pride. So if you're a garden in a City of Atlanta park, that's one organization that serves as a fiscal sponsor. And they basically, so they'll hold the funds in their account and you just put in reimbursement requests with them. There are definitely other tax exempt organizations that will serve as fiscal sponsors. If you have any questions about that or having issues identifying one, definitely you can reach out to me and I can help partner you with a fiscal sponsor. A lot of times churches are a good place to look if there's a church nearby. We do require the fiscal sponsor agreement that's over here on the left. We require that is completed and uploaded with your application. So that's a good incentive to get started early on your applications and make sure that you're having that conversation with your fiscal sponsor, filling out this form, and submitting it with your application before the deadline. And then we will be in contact with them after grant announcements are made to actually get their banking information and all of that. So some general tips for the Foodwell Alliance grant specifically. We really encourage applicants to use the application to help us get to know your community garden. So I know there are a lot of community gardens that have worked with Foodwell for years and have applied year after year. And we may do volunteer days, or you may interface with our staff really often, but we still want to be sure that you're making a case for your garden to receive these funds, and that you're really clearly presenting the current stage of your garden, because we know community gardens change all the time, membership fluctuates, leadership changes. But we really want to know, what the current membership is looking like, what the current goals of the garden are looking like, what the current needs and challenges of the garden are looking like, and just get a really clear picture of the current state of the garden. We also encourage you to be clear on how you intend to use the grant to address the top needs of your garden. So you should try to early on have a conversation with the members of your garden, and set some goals. If you don't already have those strategic goals, like we were talking about a bit earlier, try to come up with just some of the top needs. We need a fence repair. We need, our beds are falling apart. We need those fixed. We really need to automate our irrigation, or we had a hard time sourcing compost last year. Make sure that you're identifying those needs early, and so that you can then make the case for how this funding can be used to help resolve some of those challenges. And be realistic and be clear in your request. You can write a really good story about all these like big lavish plans that you have for the garden, but you do have essentially like a little under a year, because we send out the reports in late October to actually implement this grant. So you want to make sure that it's realistic, and that you have the people in place to manage those funds, and to take on the project if it is something like an infrastructure improvement. Give yourself time to understand and navigate and complete the application. It's due in 3 days, so I know that's a bit of a short timeline right now. But in general, that's something that, Amy said, and I'll echo it, that you really want to start early with looking over those questions and getting familiar with the grant portal for any application that you're working on. We also, at the very bottom of the application, there's a place for 3 photos. And those are really, really helpful. We do site visits, but the pictures are really, really helpful in helping us get an idea of the current state of your garden. Like I was saying, we really want like wide angle pictures of the full garden, the current state of the beds. If you're applying for a specific, you want a shed, where's that going to go? Also this is kind of a very specific thing, but the format of the photos, iPhone photos are .heic, and when you upload those into the grant portal, we can't see them. So if you can convert your photos to a JPEG, or put them in a document and make them a PDF, or whatever you need to do to make those put those in a different format, that would be awesome. So we can view them a little easier. Cool. So these are just the next steps for community garden applicants. So you want to register your garden with the online grant system. We use a system called Foundant that you can find on our website. You can find a direct link. If you think that your garden already has an account, please reach out to me so we don't have duplicates. I can get you set up as a contact on an existing account to submit that application. I'll say again, just discuss with your fellow gardeners the garden's needs and how the grant could help address those needs. Decide if you're going to go for the smaller or the larger grant, or, if you're going to go for the larger, definitely apply for the smaller as well. Identify a fiscal sponsor, and then submit your application by the 23rd at midnight. Okay, so I'll move on to farm grants. A lot of this is going to be pretty similar we use the same grant portal and a lot of the same kind of questions. The only thing that's different about the farm grants is a lot of these are farm businesses, and they're for-profit operations. So we really want to see kind of the business side of things and how you're operating as a business, or how you're operating as a nonprofit, or kind of the structure of your farm. Yeah. So with these grants, we have two categories as well. Like I said, the farm support grant is $8,000, and we'll be awarding 29 of those. And then the farm forward grant is $25,000, and we'll be awarding 2 of those. Farm eligibility criteria, the same 5-county service area. So same question. Even if you your farm is in Henry County and you come into Fulton County to the Piedmont Park Farmers Market, unfortunately, it's the geographic location of your farm. Even if you're a resident and you farm outside, your farm itself has to be in the service area, unfortunately. One thing that's a bit different with the eligibility criteria for farms for this grant versus just Foodwell Resources in general is you have to be a registered farm entity. So you have to be a business or a nonprofit, and you have to have documentation of a business license, or if you're a nonprofit, some other registration, or tax exempt status documentation. That is one of the requirements on the grant application. So you want to make sure that you upload that. You must have a production focus. So you're producing food or flowers, and making those products available to the community regularly. So if you just do one annual sale and you're growing a couple things in your backyard, that doesn't really fit into the eligibility criteria. We want to make sure that you're consistently making that food or those flowers available. So you're selling at a farmer's market, or you have a regular CSA, selling, or you have a farm stand, or selling to restaurants, or if you're a nonprofit and you are donation based, that you're doing consistent regular donations. So what we specifically are looking for in an application, we really want to see or to hear about how you view your role in the Metro Atlanta local food system. So, how are you making your food available to the community? Who are your customers? Who are you working with on a regular basis? How are you engaging the community? We also want to see, hear about the mission of your farm, and how your farm interfaces with the community. So it's really important to, in general, to have, the good farm business plan, and to have, strategic goals for what you want to do in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. And the more you can make that clear in your application, the better. I also encourage you to clearly describe the current needs and challenges of the farm. So why are you applying for this grant, and how are the funds specifically going to help with the current challenges that your farm is facing? What changes do you want to see? How are you hoping to improve? What steps are you planning on taking to reach those goals that you've set for yourself? And then this is really the biggest one, is having a realistic and clear plan for using the funds. So there's a detailed budget section, as detailed as you can get in that section. I understand that prices change, and you can do projections, and things may change with the actual grant implementation, but as clear as you can get and as detailed as you can get in the application, the better. And also outlining specifically, if you're going for that $25,000 grant, breaking down your management plan for that. So who on the farm is going to be the project manager for this large infrastructure improvement? Who are you going to use as your contractor? What's the timeline? When are you going to get in contact with those people? When are you going to start breaking ground on your project? How are you going to wrap it up by the end of 2026? All really good questions to ask yourself and to make clear in your application. Some examples of how farmers have used these grants in the past: production infrastructure, so like high tunnels, post-harvest infrastructure, wash stations, cold storage, cool bots, farm site work, land work, Professional services, that's a big one that I think people should really take advantage of is if you need to speak with a lawyer, you need to speak with a tax professional or someone to help with your business planning, or if there's a training that you want to go to help further, further your farmer journey, I don't know, to learn more about your craft, then those are all, eligible projects. There we go. Some additional considerations. So grant reporting, all the funds need to be used in 2026. That's true for the community gardens and for the farm grants. Farm grants specifically will have a report due on November 30th of 2026. So you want to hopefully have those spent by the beginning of November so that you can work on that report. I've said this already, but really think about the changes that you want to see in your farm operation and what would really streamline your operation or help you to grow and move on to the next phase in your operation, and how those funds can really help with that. Funds can be combined with other sources. So if you received a high tunnel through NRCS and you need some funds to help with the cost share, that's one way that these funds can be used. If you're receiving funds from another organization, who have a really large infrastructure project, those can can definitely be applied to this program, but you want to make sure that you outline in your budget if funds are, if you apply for the 25,000 and that's not going to cover the full thing, where are the rest of those funds going? When are you going to receive them? Have you been approved already? Making it as clear as possible that you will be able to, finish the entire project. We do get a lot of questions about flower farms and school farms. Flower farms are eligible, but you want to really describe how you fit into the Metro Atlanta local food system and the value that your product is, providing, and kind of just where you see yourself in that ecosystem. School farms specifically, so they need to have a production focus, so not purely just like an education garden. So school gardens are not eligible, but school farms are eligible, which is kind of feels a bit nitpicky, but basically the farm needs to have a dedicated farm manager. So someone who's on staff whose job is to manage the school farm. That's not, a classroom teacher doing that in their free time, but somebody, that's fully managing the farm would make you eligible for this grant. And then the last question is, you just want to make sure that you have the capacity to manage a large infrastructure project. So if you're going to be doing something like building a high tunnel or doing a irrigation overhaul, you want to make sure that you have the capacity to manage that, and that you're ready to take that project forward. Checklist is really similar to the community garden one. You, if you're a 2025 recipient, make sure you get your report in so that you're eligible to reapply. On the Farm Resource Center page on our website, you'll get the link to the grant portal. I would recommend registering now, getting familiar with the portal, coming up with those top challenges and needs, and deciding which tier of the grant you're hoping to apply for, and get those in by January 11th. Cool. And I will pass it over to Brennan to talk about government grants.
Okay, it's been some great information tonight, and I want to give a shout out to Calia and the Food Well Alliance. We started our farm back in 2006, and Food Well has been a great part and instrumental in our development as a farm over the past 20 years. But I'm going to talk to you today about federal grants that are out there to help you. Before I start, though, I just want to give some caveats. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, given the current the political climate in Washington, some of these programs may or may not be available. I'm starting to see that a lot of them are, because they've been written into legislation by Congress, so they have to fund them. But I'm just presenting this information out here so that you know what's available to you. So, all right. This is a big slide with a lot of information. We're just going to cover. There's a lot of federal money out there that people don't know about. And I'm not going to cover this entire list. But some of the things that you should know is that there's a lot of federal money out there to support farmers. Most farmers only know about NRCS and FSA, but there's a lot of other programs out there um, that can assist farmers and not only their operations, but also in helping to build their local food systems. And so I hope I have these slides where we can cover these individually. So I'm the Southeastern Outreach Coordinator for Southern Share. And the one thing I'm going to really stress if you are thinking about applying, well, really thinking of applying for any grants is to understand um, funding for your farm, you have to assemble a toolkit. And all of these different financing programs are tools in your toolbox. Some may work for you, some may not work for you. And it's your it's up to you to decide which funding tool is going to be best for me. The second thing I'm going to say is a lot of people jump into the grant world without understanding what they really need grant funds for and also what that grant funder is looking for. It's not just a matter of you getting money from the grant funder. These funders have specific goals that they are looking to accomplish by putting out these grant announcements. So in our case, I represent Southern Sustainable Agriculture and Agriculture and Education. Everybody calls it Southern SARE, but we fund research and education grants around sustainable agriculture in 13 states, U.S., Puerto Rico, and U.S. Virgin Islands. And that's important to know. So if you come to us looking for funding for a tractor or for a high tunnel, that's not within our purview. We're not going to give you funding to put up a high tunnel, but if you want to research how you can grow hibiscus or citrus within that high tunnel, then we're the folks that you come to. So we have 7 different grant programs with funding levels ranging, and this is an old slide. I think our lowest level now is 20, 25,000 up to 1 million. We are a competitive program, which means you have to compete and are eligible entities. And it's always important to make sure that you're eligible to apply for these federal grant programs. So if you're an individual farmer, most grant programs are you kind of shut out. We have some programs specifically for farmers. What I would suggest, though, for you farmers out there who want to tap into some of this other federal money is to talk to your tax advisor or your attorney and just set up a simple nonprofit that, and it could be a Georgia nonprofit, or if you want to go you want to go the distance and set up a 501(c)(3, um, your your ability to access so much funding is going to be so much greater. But these are competitive grant programs to eligible entities, and you see them there, and you see the funding levels that we give across all programs. You can go. So the ones I want to highlight here is our producer grant program, which actually open right now. I think it closes December 24th. I'm not sure. But that is some funding for farmers, producers, livestock or crop producers to do their own self-directed funding, self-directed research on their own farms. And I think that number is now up to about 25,000. A lot of people when I talk to a lot of people, sometimes as I mention research, their eyes roll back in the back of their head. But farmers are always doing researches. You're either tinkering with new ways to grow new crops on your land. You're looking at trying to build more sustainable and scale appropriate technology that'll work on your farm. So farmers are always doing research. I got involved with the Southern Sierra program because when Gwen and I moved down here and started selling at farmers markets, um, most of y'all know the only melons you see typically at Southern farmers markets are watermelons. You may see cantaloupes, you may see muskmelons, honeydews at something, but for the most part, you see watermelons. You rarely see the whole variety of melons that are out there, the Europeans, the smaller Asian melons, the smaller African melons. And I want to know why we couldn't grow them. And when I would ask people to say, "Oh, we just can't grow them down here. We just grow watermelons," and nobody can give me a good answer. Somebody told me about this Southern Sierra program. Never wrote a grant in my life, people. Never wrote a grant in my life, and I wrote a grant, and I got $9,500 to do a 2-year test trial on growing out European melons in the South. So going back to Amy's refrain, don't be afraid to apply for these things. So that producer grant is open up until December, as I said. Just another example. I have been trying, my job is to get folks to apply for grants, and I've been trying to get a sister down in the Virgin Islands to apply for grants. And then finally she said, "Oh, well, I have an idea, but I don't know how it's going to go." And so in the Virgin Islands, almost every farmer produces some sort of value added product. That's just the way it is down there. They don't just grow their crops, they do juices, they do medicinal tinctures and stuff like that. And so Sister Benita produced a medicinal product that was made from lemongrass, and she wanted to know what lemongrass would give her the most bang for the buck um, for the property she was looking for her medicinal tincture. And so she applied and she worked with the University of Virgin Islands, and she got, I think at that time it was around $17,000, $18,000 to test that. And so she got that grant, but the thing I'm proudest on, that single grant led to her working with farmers on the island to form at least in the process of forming a lemongrass cooperative. Those of you in Georgia who may know Joe Reynolds got a grant from us a couple of years ago about looking at southern stem blight on beans and using compost tea to combat that. So if you're tinkering around with anything like that on your farm, you can approach us and apply for us for some money. The other grant I want to the on-farm research grant is the same as our producer grant, except a third party's carrying out that research on the farm. So it could be a nonprofit such as Foodwell, it could be Georgia Organics, it could be one of the land grant universities, UGA or Fort Valley State, but they are the ones who are leading that project on that farmer's farm. Because some farmers say, "Hey, I got this idea I want to do, but I don't want to run a research project." So that's what that money's there. And I think the other ones I'm just gonna leave by because I don't think it's applicable to your audience at this point. So next slide. So this is our producer grant program, which I told you about. This is an old slide. We're up to about 20,000 a year, 25,000 if you include another farmer in your research. These calls are open right now because everything that's going on in DC, we had to reshuffle a lot of stuff. And we had to rejig our schedule. Hopefully next year we'll be on the regular schedule, and you go to southernsierra.org to see when our grants usually come out. Next slide. Um, this is an FSA program called the Value Added Producer Grant Program, and this is designed to fund for those of you who are funding who do value added products or are interested in doing value added products. This is designed to fund projects that facilitate development of value added products. So producing muscadine wine, there's a lot we funded. And actually, we're getting a lot of applications in about the production of elderberry and the development of elderberry value-added products. And there's a lot of money flowing out into meat processing right now. But that's what this grant's for. They have two components: a planning grant, so you can use up to 125,000 to do feasibility studies and business plans, all the planning activities for any idea you may have. And then you can come back once you've done that planning grant and it seems like your idea is going to be feasible. You can apply for up to $500,000 to fund the implementation of getting that idea started. So, all right, these are the next two programs are programs of a lot of farmers don't know about. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the Farmers Market Promotion Program. And this is a program that's designed to fund projects that fund uh, direct producer to consumer direct sales channels. So any marketing opportunity there where that dollar is going directly from that consumer straight into the farmer's hands. So that could be a farmer's market, a roadside stand, a multi-farm CSA, a mobile market, any situation where that dollar from the consumer is going straight into the farmer's hands. Um, and a lot of folks in the state of Georgia have used this. I know community farmers markets have used this in the state of Georgia to support their farmers markets, and it pays for a bunch of stuff. It will help you pay for a startup of a market. It would help you pay for staffing because these markets do take some staff to help run them. It'll help pay for supplies and materials and marketing and that type of stuff. It's typically released in the spring. They released it late this year. They released it in June, I think, and I was really surprised. And agritourism as well. So if you're a farmer who wants to add some agritourism features for your farm, you can come here for funding. The average award's $100,000, but if you're going to do, if Foodwell, for example, wanted to do some training with farmers or implementing agritourism fund features on their farm, you can go up to $300,000 on their farm. And there's no matching farms, meaning that you have to come up with some out-of-pocket money. So the local foods promotion program, those of us, my wife and I ran the Lawrenceville Farmers Market for about 4 or 5 years back in 2027 to 2012, whatever. But those of us who's been working with local food systems knew that a problem that we were going to have was not only just direct to consumer, but how do we get our farmers into larger supply chains? And so the local foods promotion program is designed to fund projects that facilitate sales into larger marketing channels, such as institutions, wholesale markets, restaurants. And some of the things that it's helped to provide funding for food health development, processing facilities, and like the value added producer grant, value added product development. And once again, it's two components. Planning grants, so you have an idea, but you don't know if it's going to work. You can help go to UGA or go to Foodwell or go anybody to help you come up, help you do an analysis of your business idea, and it will pay for those feasibility studies and business plans. And if it turns out that it would be a good idea, you can come back for up to $500,000. There's 25% matching funds. But all of that matching funds can be in kind, meaning you don't have to come up with any in cash. You would just have to have people say, okay, I'm going to donate time or equipment or office space or whatever. And so this is another important tool that we can have in our toolbox to help develop local food systems. And I think that's all I had. But I just want to echo once again what Amy said is don't be afraid to apply for these things. I'm always disappointed when And I've reviewed for a lot of these grant programs, and I don't see the people I think I should be seeing apply for them. The other thing, if you're really uncomfortable thinking you don't have the chops to apply for a grant, all of these programs look for grant reviewers. And the best way to learn how to write a grant is to become a reviewer. A reviewer is actually the person once that person who submits a grant hits submit, once those applications come in, the reviewers are the one who to review those grants and make decisions on whether or not they should be funded. And they're not looking for people with a bunch of letters behind their names. They're not looking for PhDs. They're looking for people like a lot of you on this call, your farmers, your livestock producers, and they want your life experience to help them determine whether these grants are a good idea. And most of them pay some funding, not ain't a whole lot of money, but your real payment will be seeing how the process works on the other side of the fence. So, most of the time when these grants put out their call for proposals and open up their grant calls. At the same time, they're also looking for reviewers. And I can't stress enough, if you can be a reviewer and you have the time, be it, because it will make you a stronger grant reviewer and eliminate a lot of the mystique that goes around writing grants. And so, that's all I have. I hope you got something out of it. So.
Thank you, Brennan. That was all really great to hear. And so we'll pull the feedback survey back up, friends, but we're actually gonna transition so that you can see all the presenters and open the floor up for questions. And you can submit those to the Q&A function. And one of the first questions I'm seeing is, how do I become a grant reviewer?
Um, Most of the times when our grants come out, they are looking for reviewers. And if you don't know even where to look for these grants, one good source is the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. I will put their link in the chat. I think it's sustainableag.org. But they send out a weekly newsletter, and if there's a grant that's open, um, they will they will put a link to the grant and all that they will tell you about the grant, put a link to it, but at the same time they'll be looking for reviewers, and you could always go there and say, I want to be a reviewer.
So, thank you. And we had another question. Are there any special consideration in applying for veterans?
Most federal grants have provisions. Like I said, this whole landscape has changed. A lot of the federal grant programs, at least, and Amy could speak to what's happening on the philanthropic side, but a lot of federal grants would give you points or carve out specifically money for veterans. I don't know if that's still the same case, but yes, there are provisions made for making sure we take care of our veterans. So,
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, a question. Are there any grants for creating a land trust or getting land? Good question.
Not to my knowledge.
no. Grants for land is like the unicorn of the grant landscape. There a lot of people. I get calls every year. I'm the one to start a farm. Where do I go to get a grant for land? There's just not anything out there that will allow you to buy land, and actually can't even get a grant to buy like livestock or anything like that. So, there's some organizations like what's their name? That's doing work and getting newer farmers on, and Kalia. You guys may know it. That's getting people onto larger farm spaces. It's Uh, well, I just can't call her name. I haven't
Yeah,
been
the
seeing her name.
conservation fund.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking
Mhm.
of. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's what. But you already have to be a farm, and you already have to have a land, unfortunately. So
Great question. Cool. Okay, we have a question. When you submit a grant, do you generally get feedback if not selected?
I think it's so funny that you asked that because I just sent an email when we did not get that grant that I was talking about today. And I sent them an email saying, hey, it never hurts to ask. It's a good idea to ask for feedback. They may say, sorry, we don't do that. But I just said, hey, if you wouldn't mind, and if that's possible, could you give us some feedback? And I said, after the new year, they've still got to go through their whole process. So it's a good idea just to, you know, add that consideration in there that you're thinking of all that they've got on their plate now. They've got to choose those final awardees and then do all the things. So I just said, yeah, if you've
yeah,
got time after the new year, please, we would love to get that feedback. So yes, I say ask for feedback.
yeah.
They're not always going to give it to you, but ask.
Yeah, on the federal side, you'll always get when they give you your if you didn't get funding, they will always send you the comments of the reviewers as to why you didn't get it. So and I'm going to be honest with you, most reviewers are conscientious folks who really want to do a good job and read. And then you got your morons, and then so take for federal grants, you will always get a summary of what the reviewers thought about your grant, both good and bad. And if you get turned down, at least on the federal side, uh, go look at what they told you as far as the comments. And if you feel up to go back and apply again, taking into account what those reviewers told you, and make your grant stronger. So.
Hmm, Good question. Okay. Are there any events that help connect new farmers with experienced farmers that you recommend? I guess a little bit outside of the grant function there. Um, okay.
We
We
might
might
move
move
past
past
that
that
one
one
for
for
now.
now.
Good
Good
question.
question.
I would, I'll,
Okay.
sorry, we're all in the same room, getting some echoes. I would recommend, I feel like any kind of networking event that, a lot of educational events end up being networking events. So, getting tapped in with, workshops, with, other ag organizations. They're people are coming because they want to talk to other farmers, and I mean they want to learn as well. But a lot of times I feel like there's like most of the benefit of going to a workshop in person is that networking. So I think just getting out there and going to as many events as possible. I don't know of any like specific organizations that are trying to get people in touch with one another, but I feel like it happens organically a lot of the time.
Yeah, what I would recommend is we're starting to hit
Kelly?
conference season. The
Oh,
last 2 weeks, I've been hitting conferences. If you can ever get to a conference, get to one. Either if it's local or regional, get to one, And I always fuss at people saying, well, I don't have time to do that because I have to stay on the farm. If you don't have time to go to a conference, then you're not looking after your farm because that's where you're going to gather your knowledge and make your connections. Now, conferences are expensive. They are. So if you see a conference that you want to go to and you look at the registration costs and what the hotel and travel is going to be, don't be discouraged, but there's always potential scholarships. We provide scholarships for folks to go to a lot of conferences. So don't look at the registration and stuff and just say, oh, I can't afford that. Just poke around. You can contact me or you can contact the conference organizers who a lot of times have money to provide scholarships for you to go there. But there's nothing better for farmers to get around other farmers away from the farm where you can talk about stuff. Um, uh, so yes, there's no dedicated areas in connecting farmers with farmers, but there's always these conferences that you can go to where a bunch of farmers and producers are going to be at. So.
I would add, um, okay, I would add that our events that we have here at Foodwell, so you probably are already on our email list if you are on this call today, but I'll go ahead and say if you don't get our emails, I would sign up. You can go to our homepage and get that. But our annual Soil Festival is a great place to just come and have a good time. And there's always a lot of gardeners there, a lot of farmers there, and people are just hanging out, having fun, and talking to one another. And so that's a more casual way to go about it. There are workshops. This year, I believe we're going to do a bit more hands-on workshops than in years past, but that's always like the second Saturday in May. And we'll be promoting that, so look out for that. We have our fruit tree sale in February, and there are workshops there. So, if you're a person who you steward an orchard, a lot of folks that are working on farms, farmers do come to that to buy trees. So that's another place to do some networking because we make it like an event. It's not just a sale. There are definitely workshops and a lot of fun stuff going on. It's kind of a festival feel. And, our workshops with Atlanta Botanical Gardens, that kind of thing. So we have a lot going on at Foodwell that you can tap into as well.
Yeah, and I know Foodwell, once again, giving props to Foodwell, we got one of their grants and we put up some caterpillar tunnels and Foodwell reached out to me and said, can we turn this into a learning opportunity? And so for that whole day, we brought a bunch of farmers came in, learned how to put up caterpillar tunnels and stuff like that. So a lot of this stuff is, imp you just have to make sure you stay in touch with Foodwell. You're on their mailing list, but there's a lot of little one-off stuff that can be very, very valuable to you.
Well, thank you. That's great. Okay. We have another question. I'm a newbie to farming and have never written a grant. What do you recommend for me to get started?
Well, I would just say start compiling your items that I talked about in that toolkit. I would say do that. Start getting your stuff together and then start exploring where are the grants. So, we will not only provide the recording, but also the slides for this. I think Larry may have mentioned that, so I might be repeating that, but so you can go back and look at those that I laid out without having to watch this whole thing over again. And just go looking around and seeing with these resources that I provided and that Brennan provided, and certainly if you haven't applied for the Foodwell grants, definitely apply for those. That's a really good place to start and an easy place
Mhm.
to start. And even with the 3 days, you've got time. You can do it.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid. Just
Yeah.
write from your heart, write from your knowledge, write from what it is you're trying to accomplish and do and take your garden or farm to the next level. That's what I would say.
Yeah. I did all that. You start out with the easy to approach grants such as Foodwell. There's another organization called RAFI out of North Carolina that does a small grant. They even allow you to submit handwritten grants, but start with something that feels comfortable and approachable to you. Some of these federal grants, quite frankly, can be intimidating, but if you've got a friendly funder and like Foodwell and stuff, start out with them and going back to the original someone's questions about will you get feedback, Foodwell and some of these organizations are small enough that they will give you really personable feedback on if your project didn't get funded, why it didn't get funded. And so,
Awesome. Okay, we have another question. Is there any partnership with the City of Atlanta Office of Sustainability to utilize empty city lots for urban community garden spaces?
So there's the Atlanta has a program called the Grows a Lot program, and they I think it's with the Office of Resilience in the mayor's office, where they offer up vacant sites for farms and community gardens, and they have a cohort right now that they just offered up 2 sites. One of them is for a 1-year lease and one is for a 3-year lease on a site. So Atlanta would definitely be the place to look at for that.
Great. Okay. Does the research proposal for the SARE research grant need to be an innovation in the market, or can it simply be new to a specific farm?
Um, Either or, it could be a new marketing innovation, or it could be something that you want to innovate on your farm. So, just a good example, our USDA zones have been changing like crazy. So crops we haven't been able to grow here, all of a sudden now farmers are experimenting with them. Another one is with the influx of different ethnic groups coming into Atlanta and to other areas, there are crops that many small scale farmers really hadn't grown, stuff like callaloo and stuff like that. So you can look to see if that could be A, a crop that you can grow, and B, will it be marketable for you? So it's a combination of both things. So
Thanks, Brennan. Okay. How much land does it take to be recognized as a farm or conversely as a garden?
For Foodwell, we don't have like a minimum, especially as we work with a lot of urban farms and gardens, and I know they can be of all shapes and sizes. Um, so it's more for community gardens. It's more of, I guess, like the goal of the organization to determine the differentiation between a farm and a garden. We've had a lot of conversations on our team about what's a farm and what's a garden. But if you're doing like for community gardens, if you're growing more for more for educational purposes or more for community members are taking home the food, that would fall more into the garden category, versus a farm is going to be a lot more production based. A lot of them are going to be for profit. There are definitely nonprofit farms that exist and that are donation based, but it's more of a scale question there, rather than like a size necessarily. And I know for Brennan, you could probably answer this better than I can, but for USDA, I'm gonna let Brennan answer that because I don't.
yeah. USDA doesn't actually define a farm by its size. They define it by what your sales are. So, and it's usually $1,000, and in many cases that's self-reportable. So technically, if you sell or you report that you sold $1,000 worth of produce, your farm. Now you can do that off a quarter acre. You could do that out of your backyard selling lettuce, but USDA is not going to say you have to have X amount of acres for you to be considered a farm. So.
Awesome. So for grants that provide planning or implementation funding, are the recipients allowed to contract a third-party consultant as part of the budget expenses to ensure an efficient use of funds?
Absolutely.
Cool. Um, awesome. And then someone asks, is moringa considered to be an exploratory crop and does it grow in Zone 8A?
A lot of folks are growing moringa here in the southeast as an annual. It could not survive our maybe in Texas and some places in Florida it could survive the winters. But in for example, here in Georgia, no way the trees can survive the winter. But a lot of people are experimenting with them growing as annuals. And so there's probably a lot of research and stuff that could be done around that, you know, what the procedures are, and a lot moringa's grown from everything, for the leaves, the seeds, and so there's still a lot of research that needs to be done around moringa. But yes, that's another example of these crops that are coming in with the changing climate.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question. Can we get fruit trees on credit at the fruit tree sale if we're approved for a grant?
I don't think so. I would say by the time the fruit tree sale will be mid, I think it's on Valentine's Day this year. So for a community garden, your funds would be hopefully we're hoping to make announcements on January 30th or first week of February. So it is possible that funds would be deployed by then. There is a grower discount for farmers and community gardeners that are purchasing trees. So that is something that you can get it at a much lower cost using your grant funds, but you would have to pay using the grant funds rather than credit, because we would just we send the full grant amount. So it'd be hard to kind of break it up.
And for any community gardens that are considering like having a orchard at the community garden that would be for donation or like community access, we do have a separate orchard project grant that you can apply to on a rolling basis. It's on our website. And we'd be happy to share that with you all separately. But yeah, that is another way to potentially get some fruit trees into your community orchard or garden or growing space too, outside of the fruit tree sale. Yay, yay, fruit trees. Okay. Do you need an FSA track number to be eligible for a Foodwell Alliance Farm grant?
Nope, not at all. We just require, like I was talking about with you have to be a registered entity. So that's more for actually receiving the funds. We just want to make sure that you, have a tax ID number and that you are like a farm business or a registered nonprofit, so that we're not just, sending those funds to an individual that's not, like an entity. But an FSA number, you don't have to have ever accessed any kind of government funds or, interfaced with FSA at all if you don't want to.
That's a great question. I always tell people most federal grants, you don't need a farmer track number at all. You do need an entity number, and there's a thing called sam.gov that you have to go through, which is not as laborious as going through the FSA projects. But a lot of people just know NRCS, and I need a farm and track number. Most federal grants do not ask you for that, so we don't.
Awesome. Okay. I tried researching more on Georgia Farmers Market Association for the farmers market grants, but their website is no longer there. How can we get in touch about applying for grant funding for that?
Well, Georgia Farmers Market Association no longer exists, unfortunately. It's tough. Foodwell's a nonprofit, and I'm sure everybody on this phone call could tell you how hard it is to maintain a nonprofit and funding and stuff like that. So they went out. Actually, Sadrina Jalal and I actually got the original funding to do that. So I think they are doing a lot of work through the National Farmers Market Association. And I know that they have a LFPP grant or FMPP grant to help support farmers markets, but GFMA is gone.
Cool. Thank you guys so much. Okay. Do we have any more questions before we wrap up this evening?
There was one question. Sorry. There was one question that I addressed in the chat and didn't just wanted to cover here as well. But there was a question: does the farm grant cover salaries of farmer management? So we have a separate labor support stipend that's it's an annual. You're eligible once every 12 months as a farm, and it's up to $3,000 to pay for farm staff, to pay yourself, or to pay other farm staff. Salaries can be built into the grant application. I would encourage prioritizing materials and infrastructure improvements. If you do build in a salary, I would recommend only being part of the overall grant. We really, as just like an overall tip for a successful, like what we're looking for in a successful grant application, is we want to be sure that the the farm isn't, relying on a Food Well Alliance grant every year to keep their head above water. We want to make sure that farms are, operating on their own, and that they're, using funds to maybe fix an infrastructure improvement or to expand to the next step, but not that if you didn't get the $8,000 grant this year, then your farm wouldn't exist. So that's something that if you can make that clear in your grant application as well, that could be really, really helpful, just to show, we have an income, or we have a plan for managing farm expenses, but this is how the grant could help us, expand. And there was one more question about, does the farm grant cover cost of establishing a previous garden to a farm? So you, as part of the eligibility, you have to have been in production for at least a year and making your food available to the public for at least a year to be an eligible farm. If you have a home garden and you've been producing for your family and you haven't been making that, haven't been selling that food or having a CSA, you would need to take that step before applying for a grant for expansion. But grants can be used for expansion. They just can't be used to establish a new farm or garden.
And one thing I like to add is, as we're winding up, is applying, and if you're successful, getting that money is one thing. But on the back end, you have some responsibilities. There's reporting responsibilities. You just don't get this money and spend it. The funder is going to require reports, and in the case of Food Well, those reports are fairly simple and straightforward. But in terms of some of these federal grants, and Amy could speak to some of the philanthropic grants, which I'm not familiar with. But at the end of the day, you have a responsibility on reporting that, how you use that money and what you did. And it's very important because at some point you may not want to do it because the reporting requirements is going to tax your capacity to be able to do it. So just keep that in mind when you're applying for different buckets of monies.
Yeah, I'll add to that. We will be doing another workshop, and I think we've got the information out there that that's coming on reporting. And that's a whole thing. Could say a lot about that. But yeah, mainly, just like Brennan said, you've got to be sure that you have the capacity to actually do the thing that you applied to do, and be able to report that that actually happened. And if it didn't happen and you had to pivot, there's grace for that usually with most grantors. They will have grace for that if you have a really good reason and you've pivoted and you've maybe let them know ahead of time. And those are real important things to consider. But yeah, you've got to be able to say how you use that money. And they're all different. Some of them are very simple and some of them are quite intricate. It's almost as much work as actually applying in some cases. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we had a question. Can someone speak to the compost that's available under Food Well?
Yes. So we do an annual compost giveaway at our office, that's the word I was looking for, where people can come and load up their own compost. But we also do compost deliveries to farms and community gardens. So we have a partnership with Compost Now for farms, and farms receive a dump truck of 15 cubic yards of Compost Now compost. And then community gardens will receive 2 cubic yards in the large cubic yard totes delivered to their garden. Those are free of cost. And the application for that is pretty simple. So we have, I think it's a monday.com form, really similar to a Google form. And that should open up at the top of the year, probably like late January, February. And then those will be delivered through like March, April. I would recommend as soon as applications open, getting your application in, because that's how they determine the delivery. I think it's first come, first serve on the deliveries. So if you wait to put in your application, your delivery will probably be later into the season. So definitely get those applications in early. But yeah, great resource for community gardens and for farms.
That is a great program. And they give you a generous dump when they do the compost. So we're still working down our pile, but that is just another thing that Foodwell does very well. It's not too many places that, provide that service for farmers, but and the compost is excellent. So we've been using it a couple of years.
Okay, we're getting towards the end of our time, but we have three more questions, and then y'all will be transitioning back to the PowerPoint, and we have the contact info for everyone who's on here, so we can make sure that y'all stay in touch. But we'll go ahead and do these. Are there any other resources and funding to establish new community gardens? Community members have the time, but not the money to start gardens. Thinking of the SNAP emergency.
Yeah, other than what I shared, I can't think of anything else. And yeah, go on ChatGPT and just ask because something that we might not know about may pop up. And you can't believe everything you see there, but once you research it, and you'll find out if it's for real or not. And most of the stuff is for real. So that's where I would start.
There's a grant called, and Callie, you may know it, Community Food Projects. It's a federal grant. I don't know that much about it. I know it's highly competitive, but I know it does support all types of local food implementations. But it's a really difficult grant from what I understand. So uh, that's all I know.
Yeah, unfortunately at Foodwell, where our funding is limited to existing community gardens. Um, yeah, I wish there were more funds out there to establishing the gardens. A lot of times it takes kind of, more of a grassroots effort. And even if with the Foodwell community garden grants, showing even if you are just growing in ground for the first year and you have that community buy-in and you have the land, proof of commitment and proof of community involvement can be enough to be eligible for the grant for after your first year.
So I'll just add real quick that, you might try your local Costco or, your local Lowe's or Home Depot and just see because we were able to get a little bit of lumber for some project that one of our other staff members was working on. I can't even remember, but and so just go to your neighborhood hardware store and see if they've got any extra lumber and maybe soil and things like that. They'd be willing to give you a little bit. Every little bit helps.
Agreed. And not a grant resource, but Foodwell does have our volunteer program that can go out and support. So even gardens that are still in the installation phase, you can reach out to Charles, who manages our volunteer program, and kind of get some help with getting the installation and stuff. Oh. Okay. Another question. If you get a grant and receive another donation or in kind that would have been covered by the grant, what needs to happen for the overlapping funds? And can you adjust the purpose of funds in the grant after the award?
For Foodwell, you can for sure. We just open line of communication is key. You can email me and just let me know. Even if it's not because you received other funding and that's going to cover what you applied for in the grant, even if it was just we thought this was our priority and then we had a pipe burst and we had to repair our irrigation instead, or we had a conversation with growers and they decided this was more of a priority and we decided to pivot our funds. That's okay. I would like to know about it earlier rather than later. If you could just email and just make us aware, and then make sure that you really detail that in your grant report. Transparency is key on that.
So is this about you got extra money? Somebody just came in with some extra funding? Or I
Sorry,
mean,
can you
somebody
repeat?
added extra funding to you. That's extra funding. I wouldn't even mention it in the grant, to be honest with you. I would just treat that as a separate venue of funding. There's no reason why, at least on the Fed side, that you have to say in it. Now, if you're replacing a component of the funding that was in the federal grant, that's one thing. But if funding's coming in that is over and above what you had put in your budget, that that's all on you. And I wouldn't, uh, you know, probably shouldn't be saying this on a Zoom call, but I would tell the feds that you got another $50,000 to help with the project, you know.
So, okay. And one last question. Does the grant include hydroponic farming? So do any of these grants cover hydroponic farming? Oh,
Foodwells does. We've had some people use this for, more non-traditional. The farmer that got our large grant this year was is a mushroom that grows mushrooms indoors. So um, we recognize that, ag can look a lot of different ways, and hydroponic is one of a newer um, development, and happy to support anything that's growing food. So yeah, for sure.
We will, but on the research side, it has to be some unique aspect. Maybe you're trying a new fish in the system, or you want to provide education around that in your communities. So
cool. Well, a huge thank you to all of the presenters tonight. I'm going to go ahead and reshare the PowerPoint so we can make sure you guys have all of their contact info. And I did see a question, and I'm sorry that I didn't get to it, but about can we please do fun stuff midweek? We would love your feedback about, when we can have programming that works for you, what kind of programming you want to see. We'll also send a link to the survey, friends, when we send out the follow-up email. But just want to make sure you guys know we really do read this, and it's important to shaping all of our programming. And so you can scan there. I'll send this. And then I'm going to go ahead and end it with all of our presenters' contact info. So yeah, a thank you to everyone who joined us, and we appreciate the questions and your time, and we hope to have you guys join us in the future.